I raised my daughter alone after her mother died. I gave her everything, my time, my money, my soul. So when she invited me to stay with her during a rough patch, I thought it was love. I thought it was family. Until one morning, I woke up and found all my belongings dumped on her lawn. No warning, no goodbye, just a text. You made your choice. And 3 days later, she called me 32 times. But by then, I had already made mine. What happened next was rather unexpected. I will tell you everything. First, let me thank you for your continuous support. If you love stories like this one, support us by subscribing to this channel and comment where you are watching us from. It will be great to hear from you. Now let's jump into the details of what happened. When my wife died, I stopped having a reason to go home. The silence in that house became unbearable, louder than grief, louder than God. Every creak in the wood, every echo of an old laugh in the hallway made me feel like a ghost in my own skin. I'd walk past her empty chair at the kitchen table and physically ache. I didn't even realize I'd stopped cooking until I saw the mold in the fridge. I just lost the thread of life. So when Maya, my daughter, said, "Daddy, come stay with us for a while," I didn't hesitate. I packed 2 suitcases, stuffed them with my simplest clothes and the photo albums I couldn't bear to leave behind, and took the next train out. At the time, I told myself it was just a few weeks. A temporary reset. She had a big house in the suburbs, 3 bedrooms, a deck, one of those open-plan kitchens she used to dream about when she was a teenager. Her husband, Darren, was a regional manager for some logistics company I could never quite remember the name of. They had no kids yet, which made the spare bedroom open. She called it the guest room, but for the first few nights, it felt more like a sanctuary. I helped out around the house, not because they asked, because I wanted to. I swept the floors, made dinner, fixed the loose drawer in their bathroom vanity. It felt good to be useful again. The kind of good that creeps in slowly, like warmth returning to frostbitten fingers. Maya smiled more. She said things like, "It's so nice having you here. And Darren likes your cooking, you know." I believed her. At first. But it didn't take long before the tone shifted. Darren was never outright rude. Not at first. Just clipped. He'd walk in while I was folding laundry and mutter, "Didn't realize we had a live-in maid now." Then chuckle like it was a joke. Or he'd come into the kitchen while I was stirring stew and say, "You sure you're not spoiling her, Caleb? She's getting used to 5-star meals." I'd laugh it off. That's what men do when they feel insulted but can't risk a fight. We laugh. One evening, I overheard him in the hallway. He thought I was asleep. "I just think it's weird, babe. He's here every damn day like he owns the place. Cleaning, cooking, it's emasculating." Maya sighed. "He's grieving, Darren." "So? I didn't marry him. I married you." That conversation stuck with me like a splinter under the skin, small, but impossible to ignore. Still, I stayed. I told myself he was stressed. Maybe he felt his space was invaded. Maybe he didn't like anyone in his kitchen. I tried to be smaller, quieter. I started waiting until they left for work before doing chores. I kept the TV low. I'd even eat dinner in the guest room sometimes, just to avoid being in their way. Maya noticed, I think. One night, she knocked gently on my door with a bowl of soup in her hands. "You don't have to hide, you know," she said, her voice soft. "This is your home too, for now." I smiled, but something in her eyes told me even she didn't believe what she was saying. Then came the night everything broke. It was late, around 10. Darren had just come back from some company dinner, reeking of whiskey and cheap cologne. Maya looked tense. I was in the kitchen, washing a single plate when he walked in. "You know," he slurred, leaning against the counter. "My father never lifted a finger in our house. Not one." I kept washing. He worked, paid bills. His woman served him, and she was proud to do it. That's how a house works. I set the plate down carefully in the rack. "That's not how every house works," I said, keeping my tone neutral. He scoffed. "Yeah, well, maybe this one should. You're here, freeloading off your daughter, eating our food, living rent-free. The least you can do is act like a butler." "Darren," I warned, "watch your mouth." "Or what?" He stepped forward. "You'll leave? Please do. Been waiting for you to get the hint." Maya appeared behind him then, her face pale, her hands trembling. "Stop it," she whispered. He turned to her. "Tell him." And then she said the words I never thought I'd hear. Not from her. Not from my little girl who used to sit on my shoulders at the zoo, who cried when I dropped her off at her college dorm, who clung to me at her wedding reception whispering, "Thank you for everything, Daddy." She said, "Daddy, it's either you start respecting how Darren runs this house, or you leave." Just like that. No hesitation. I didn't speak. I couldn't. My throat tightened so hard it felt like someone had tied a belt around it. I looked at her, really looked, and realized she wasn't mine anymore. Not in the way she used to be. Whatever bond we had, she had reshaped it to fit her marriage. And in doing so, had carved me out. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in the guest room, staring at the ceiling, listening to every tick of the clock. I kept hoping I'd hear a knock, that she'd come in and say, I didn't mean it. But the only sounds were the wind rattling the window panes and the faint creak of pipes behind the walls. At dawn, I stood up, packed my bags, those same 2 suitcases I'd brought when I arrived, and stepped into the hallway. That's when I saw it. My things. Not just packed, but tossed. Dumped carelessly by the front door like donation bags. My photo album sat crooked on top of a box of clothes. My wife's favorite mug was cracked. A framed picture of Maya as a child had fallen face down, its glass splintered. They didn't even wait for me to wake up. I walked out onto the lawn and stood there for a moment, absorbing it all. The sun was barely up, casting long shadows across the grass. A neighbor across the street watched from their porch, pretending not to stare. I bent down, one item at a time, and began to collect what was left of me. I didn't knock. I didn't say goodbye. I just left. The moment my feet hit the pavement, I realized I had nowhere to go. It's a strange feeling, that kind of aimless freedom. There was no key in my pocket, no mailbox with my name on it waiting somewhere. Just 2 suitcases, a plastic bag filled with what couldn't fit, and a jacket that still smelled faintly of my late wife's perfume. I hadn't worn it in months. I'd buried it in the closet because every time I put it on, I'd cry. But that morning, I wore it like armor. The sun had just begun to warm the concrete beneath my shoes. Cars passed slowly, their drivers oblivious to the fact that a man was standing in the middle of a life he no longer recognized. I walked until my legs ached, dragging my suitcases behind me. They rattled on the sidewalk like unwanted guests. I passed houses with trimmed lawns, children's bicycles on porches, wind chimes dancing in the breeze. Normal life. It felt obscene. I ended up at a diner about 4 miles from Maya's neighborhood. One of those old-school joints with cracked leather booths and burnt coffee. I sat in the corner, ordered the cheapest thing on the menu, and stared out the window for what must have been hours. I kept replaying it in my head, how she said it. It's either you serve Darren or you leave. As if those were the only 2 options in the world. As if love had to be transactional. And God help me, what destroyed me wasn't that she said it. It was that she meant it. There was no tremble in her voice. No pleading. No flicker of the girl who once ran into my arms after ballet recitals. She stood behind her husband that night like a shadow. And I realized then, she'd already chosen. Around noon, I called the only person I could think of James. He was an old friend from church. Widowed too. We hadn't spoken much since the pandemic, but I remembered him once saying, "If you ever need a place to land, my garage is always empty." "Caleb," he answered, half asleep. "Everything all right?" I didn't know how to say it. What do you even call what happened? A betrayal? An eviction? A divorce from your own child? I need somewhere to stay. Just for a couple of nights, I said. I'll explain later. He didn't ask questions. Just gave me the code to the side gate and said, "Mi casa es su garage." By the time I got there, I was running on fumes. James lived in a modest 1-story on the edge of town. His garage was dusty, but it had a cot and a space heater. That night, I sat cross-legged on the cot with a blanket around my shoulders, watching dust float through the air like memories. I didn't cry. Not yet. Instead, I opened one of the photo albums. The first page was our wedding. Elise, my wife, smiling in a dress she picked secondhand because we couldn't afford new. I looked at her frozen in time, mouth mid-laugh, and I whispered, "You wouldn't believe what she said to me." Then I turned the page. Maya at age 5, covered in cake frosting. At 10, holding up her straight-A report card. At 17, the night we toured her dream college. And there it was, The picture that gutted me. Me and her. Graduation day. My arm around her shoulder. Her in that ridiculous cap and gown. Beaming like the world was finally hers. That girl, where was she? I didn't sleep that night either. But I did begin to feel something new. Not anger, not grief. Clarity. The next morning, I checked my phone for the first time since leaving. One message from James, asking if I needed anything from the store. A few spam texts. And silence from Maya. I won't lie and say I wasn't hoping for one. A message. A missed call. Something. But it didn't come. I spent the day walking to the nearby park. Watching people pass, I noticed how easy it was to become invisible. Old men feeding pigeons. Teenagers glued to their phones. Everyone so wrapped up in their own stories. It hit me that no one would ever know, just by looking at me, what I'd lost. That night, James brought me a plate of spaghetti and a cold beer. "You sure you don't want the couch?" he asked. "I'm fine," I said. "This suits me." He nodded, but before he left, he looked at me a little longer than usual. "You want to talk about it?" I hesitated. Then, my daughter kicked me out. He blinked. "What?" Told me to either serve her husband like a maid or leave. So I left. James let out a slow whistle. "Damn. Yeah. That doesn't even sound like her. Doesn't feel like her." He didn't press further. Just patted my shoulder and said, "You don't owe anyone your dignity, man. Not even family." That sentence stuck with me. By the third day, I had begun researching shelters and temp work. I wasn't broke, but I was close. Most of my savings had gone into that failed real estate deal last year. Maya knew that. It was part of why she insisted I come stay. Said she wanted to help, until you get back on your feet. I guess she didn't expect that helping meant patience. I was just finishing my coffee when the phone lit up. One missed call, Maya. Then another. Then another. Then 5 more. Then 15. Then 32. No voicemails at first. Just missed calls. Then, the text came. "Dad, please call me. I'm so sorry. Please, please. Where are you?" I didn't know he was going to do that. "Please answer me. Daddy." I stared at the screen until it dimmed, then turned it face down. I wasn't ready. I couldn't tell if she was sorry for what happened, or sorry I actually left. On the 4th day, I caved. Not to her. Not to Darren. But to the ache that had lodged itself so deep in my chest. I couldn't tell if it was grief or hunger anymore. 32 missed calls had a weight to them, not just numbers. They sounded like pounding fists on a locked door, like a daughter trying to claw her way back into a room she helped burn down. Still, I waited. I wanted to know how long she'd last without hearing my voice. How far the silence would stretch before she couldn't take it anymore. That morning, James had left early for a dental appointment, leaving me alone with the space heater buzzing and a bowl of cereal that tasted like cardboard. I watched the garage door rattle in the wind and debated listening to the voicemails. Just one, I told myself. I tapped play. The first was short. Her voice tight. Controlled. "Dad, I need to talk to you. Please call me back." The second had a tremble. I didn't know Darren was going to do that. I told him not to touch your stuff. I thought we'd talk in the morning, I swear. The third broke me a little. "You didn't even say goodbye. I woke up and you were just gone." I paused, bit the inside of my cheek. "You woke up?" As if you hadn't already put me to sleep emotionally months ago. As if I hadn't been slowly fading into the background while you played wife to a man who didn't want me breathing under his roof. I played the next one anyway. He crossed a line. I know that. But Daddy, please, don't disappear on me. I'm sorry, okay? I didn't mean for any of it to happen like that. I stopped there. Because that sentence, it was the same one Elise used the night we fought before her surgery. She'd said, "I didn't mean for any of this to happen like that," after throwing a vase at the wall during an argument about chemo versus no chemo. She was scared. That fight was the last real conversation we had before she slipped into a coma. That sentence haunted me for years. And now it had come back, in Maya's voice. I turned my phone off. Let her sit with the silence for a while longer. Later that afternoon, I went to the library, mostly for the heat, partly to get away from my own head. I sat in the corner, near the large bay windows, flipping through the newspaper and pretending to care about the mayoral race. A little girl passed by with her grandfather, giggling about how he couldn't pronounce croissant. He tried again, croissant, and she laughed so hard she nearly tripped. He caught her just in time. They looked like they belonged to each other. That scene cut deeper than I expected. I thought of all the mornings I made Maya pancakes in the shape of animals. All the times I let her sit in my lap during thunderstorms. How she used to call me her bestest best friend and promise never to move too far away. Where did all that go? Was it buried under mortgage payments and couples therapy and Darren's snide remarks? Or had I simply imagined we were closer than we were? The next time my phone lit up, it was her again. This time, she left a voicemail that sounded different. He wants to talk to you. He says he'll apologize. Please, can you just meet us for lunch or something? I'll come alone if you want. I miss you. I made a mistake. Please don't shut me out forever. There it was. Not guilt. Not regret. Fear. She was afraid I might actually be gone. I think that's the part she never believed. That I would actually go. That I wouldn't come crawling back. That I wouldn't forgive, as I always had. Like after she dropped out of college for that yoga certification that went nowhere, or when she asked to borrow from my retirement fund for their honeymoon. I'd always said yes. I'd always stayed. Until now. I didn't respond to the voicemail. But I didn't delete it either. That night, James brought home takeout, Chinese food from the little place near the gas station. He set the carton in front of me and asked, "You gonna call her back?" I shrugged. She sounded pretty wrecked. She sounded practiced, I said. He didn't push. Just sipped his beer and turned on the news. But later, as I picked at my lo mein, he asked quietly, "You think it was all Darren?" I blinked. "What do you mean?" "I mean she let it happen, right? Your stuff on the lawn. That wasn't just his doing." I looked down at the carton. "No, it wasn't." Sometimes, James said, people don't change. They just get better at hiding what they already are. That one landed hard. Because deep down, I knew this wasn't new. It didn't start with Darren. This was years of Maya learning to rewrite boundaries. Little things. How she always made me the villain when she needed sympathy. How she let people walk over me if it meant keeping her peace. I was her emotional safety net. And now that I'd finally snapped, she was free-falling. And yet, there was a part of me, buried deep, that still wanted to fix it. So I did something I hadn't done in days. I sent her a message. "Meet me tomorrow. Noon. The cafe near Elm Street." That was it. No apology. No emotion. Just an invitation to speak, face to face, without Darren. And maybe, just maybe, see if there was anything left to salvage. The cafe on Elm Street used to be her favorite when she was in high school. Back then, it was called Millie's and had chipped mugs and a jukebox in the corner that barely worked. She'd make me wait in the car while she hung out with her friends, then run back out with iced coffee and a cookie for me. Always peanut butter. Said it was payment for driving her around like a personal Uber. It had changed since then. New name, cleaner floors, minimalist decor, the kind of place that sells lattes with names like Sunrise Honey Bloom and charges extra for smiling. But the window booths were still the same. I picked one by the corner where the morning sun poured in like melted gold. I got there 15 minutes early. She was 10 minutes late. I knew she'd be late. Maya was always late when she felt guilty. It was a delay tactic, like maybe if she waited long enough, I'd stop being mad. Or maybe she thought being late would reset the dynamic. Make me the one chasing, the one eager to fix things. But I didn't chase this time. I sat still, drank plain black coffee, and waited. When she walked in, she looked smaller than I remembered. Not physically. She was still the same height, same frame, but something about her presence had shrunk. Her shoulders hunched slightly, her jaw clenched. She was wearing a coat that still had the department store crease lines down the sleeve. Her eyes found mine quickly, then darted away. "Hi," she said, sitting down before I could offer a word. I nodded. "Hi." The silence between us filled the room like fog. She cleared her throat. "Thanks for meeting me." I didn't answer. Just looked at her. Waited. She fidgeted with a napkin. I just wanted to say I'm sorry. For everything. For what Darren said. For how things happened. How things happened, I echoed. Her eyes met mine, almost defensive. "You know what I mean." "No, I don't. That's why we're here." She exhaled sharply. "Dad, come on. Don't do this." "Do what?" "Ask why my belongings were on the lawn before the sun came up? Why you watched me pack up my life like trash and said nothing?" "I didn't watch. You stood there, Maya." My voice was calm, too calm. "I saw you. In the window. You watched." Her face crumpled for a second, but she caught herself. Straightened. I didn't think he'd actually do it. I told him not to. We were arguing all night. So he wins arguments now by throwing out the elderly? Don't say it like that, she snapped. You make it sound like he's abusive. I tilted my head. Isn't he? That landed. She looked down, suddenly interested in the napkin again. He's under a lot of stress. Work's been. I'm not here to talk about Darren's stress levels. She bit her lip. You don't understand what it's like being married. It's not that simple. Sometimes you have to choose your battles. And you chose him. Her voice cracked. I didn't choose. I just didn't want to fight anymore. There it was. That sentence. The one that gutted me more than any curse, any insult, any slap could have. I didn't want to fight anymore. I leaned back. Let the words hang there like smoke. Do you think I wanted to fight Maya? I said softly. Do you think I enjoyed walking on eggshells in a house I helped pay for? Do you know how humiliating it was to be spoken to like a servant in my own daughter's kitchen? She looked up then, eyes rimmed red. I didn't ask you to cook or clean. No, but you didn't stop him from criticizing me when I did. Her breath hitched. I could see it then, regret flickering in her expression, battling with pride, with fear, with the need to justify. She wanted to win this conversation, but there was nothing to win anymore. I needed you to stand up for me, I said, voice breaking for the first time. Just once. I was scared, she whispered. So was I. We sat in silence again. The hum of the espresso machine in the background, the clink of cups, the laughter of strangers who hadn't buried a father-daughter bond under lawn trash and ultimatums. She finally reached across the table, placed her hand over mine. I miss you, she said. Every day since you left, I've felt it. Like a hole in my chest. I stared at her hand, but didn't move mine. You're still my dad. No, I said gently. I'm still a dad. But I don't know if I'm yours anymore. Not in the way I used to be. Her face crumpled. She started crying, quiet, controlled, like she didn't want the other patrons to see. I didn't reach for her. I wanted to. God, I wanted to. But I'd spent so long bending over backwards for the people I loved that I didn't know where I ended and they began. This was the first time I'd drawn a line and held it. I'm not coming back, I said. She nodded through the tears. Not just to the house, but to the role I used to play. The fixer, the buffer, the one you could unload your guilt onto and expect forgiveness like it was owed. I don't want that, she said. I just want you. I don't think you know what that means. Her lips parted, but no words came out. She looked like she was about to say something more, but her phone buzzed on the table. Darren's name flashed across the screen. She silenced it quickly, but I saw it. Of course he called. Even now, he had to insert himself. I should go, she whispered. I nodded. Yeah, you should. She stood up slowly, like her legs weighed more than the rest of her. For a moment, she looked like she wanted to hug me. But she didn't. Instead, she whispered, I hope you call me sometime. I didn't answer. And this time, she didn't wait for me to. I should have known he'd come. Men like Darren don't like loose ends. Not when they think they've won. And not when they realize the person they thought was beneath them is no longer playing along. It was a Thursday afternoon. The air was heavy with heat and dust, the kind that stuck to your skin and made everything feel slower. James was out running errands, leaving me alone in the garage with the fan spinning in lazy circles and a book I wasn't really reading. I heard the knock on the garage door before I saw him. 3 sharp raps. Assertive, like a man asking for entry into his own home. I didn't answer right away, just stared at the door, heart beating slower than it should have. I didn't want this. I didn't want to see his face or hear his voice. But I also knew, if I didn't open that door, he'd find another way to twist the narrative. He'd go back to Maya and say I refused to talk, that I was being dramatic. So I opened it. He stood there in his pressed shirt and expensive cologne, holding a paper coffee cup like we were about to have a casual catch-up chat. His smile was tight, forced. Caleb, he said, as if nothing had happened. I stepped back just far enough to make it clear he wasn't welcome to cross the threshold. Darren, I figured we should talk. Man to man. I leaned against the workbench. You mean, now that Maya's upset and you've got no buffer in the house? He chuckled, as if we were sharing a joke. Look, I'll admit things got out of hand. It was never supposed to go that far. But it did. He nodded. Yeah, I shouldn't have touched your stuff. That was a mistake. I let my temper get the best of me. I didn't respond. I watched him squirm in the silence. He took a breath. Maya's not doing well. She's been crying for days. Can't sleep. She feels awful. That tends to happen when you betray someone you love. His jaw clenched, just for a second. She wants you to come home. We both do. We can make it work. I laughed. Once, sharp and humorless. You think this is about logistics? About space? He raised an eyebrow. Isn't it? No, Darren. This is about dignity. Mine. He looked confused for a moment, like the word didn't quite compute. I took a step forward, just enough to force him to stop pretending this was civil. You humiliated me in front of my daughter, I said. You made me feel like a burden. And when she didn't defend me, you took that as permission to throw me out like I was nothing. He started to speak, but I held up a hand. You don't get to gaslight your way through this. I'm not Maya. I don't need this to work to survive. He exhaled hard, annoyed now. Look, I'm trying to be the bigger man here. You're trying to control the narrative, I snapped. You're trying to look good. Because without me in that house, there's no one left to play the villain when Maya's upset. And God forbid she starts seeing through you. His face shifted then, from plastic politeness to something darker. The kind of look I'd seen flashes of before, in those tense dinners, in the way he corrected Maya's stories, always so subtle. You think you know her better than I do? He asked, voice low. I raised her, I said. I know every version of her. But not this one, he said. Not the one who chose me. That stung. But I didn't flinch. You're right, I said. I don't know this version. And I don't think I want to. He stepped forward, close enough that I could smell the mint on his breath. You walk away now, you might lose her forever. I already lost her, I said. The moment she made me choose between servitude and silence. He blinked, thrown off by the calm in my voice. I reached into the box beside the workbench and pulled out a photo. It was worn around the edges, the colors faded, but it was one of my favorites. Maya, age 6, sitting on my shoulders, covered in ice cream. Grinning like life was magic. I handed it to him. Show her this, I said. Remind her who I used to be. He looked down at it, confused. Because I'm done being who you want me to be, I added. Tell her I said goodbye. He looked like he wanted to argue, like he was calculating whether to push harder or walk away. But something in my face must have warned him off. He nodded slowly, tucked the photo in his pocket, and stepped back. You're making a mistake, he said. No, I said. I'm making a boundary. He turned and walked away without another word. I closed the door behind him and locked it. For the first time since I left that house, I felt free. Not safe, not happy, but free. 3 weeks passed. No calls, no texts, no surprise visits. And for the first time in what felt like years, my phone's silence didn't feel like rejection. It felt like peace. James offered his couch a few more times, but I insisted on staying in the garage until I could find something more permanent. It wasn't ideal. Dust in the corners, creaking floorboards, a space heater that coughed more than it hummed. But it was mine, in the way that mattered. No one walked in and told me I was too loud. No one commented on how I folded the towels or how much electricity I used. I breathed on my own schedule, ate on my own terms, existed without permission. 2 Sundays later, I found a small one-bedroom apartment on the edge of town. The landlord was a woman in her 60s who barely looked up from her crossword puzzle during the tour. No smoking, no noise after 10, and rent's due on the 1st. You keep to yourself, I'll keep to myself. It was the most comforting contract I'd signed in my life. The place was modest. Faded carpets, old radiator, a window view of someone else's fire escape. But the quiet, God, the quiet, was the kind that healed. Not the silence of isolation I felt in my old house after Elise died, but a silence I had chosen. A silence that came with boundaries, not absence. I unpacked my life one box at a time. The photo albums went on the shelf above the TV. Elise's sweater stayed in the closet, but this time I didn't bury it. I started cooking again, not because I had to, but because I wanted to. I made stew one night and caught myself smiling at the smell. That smile startled me. It had been months, maybe years, since one appeared naturally. On a Friday morning, I stopped by the local food pantry and asked if they needed volunteers. The woman at the desk looked me up and down, then handed me a clipboard. Ever driven a delivery van? Not in years, I said. Well, she shrugged. You look trustworthy. Come back Monday. We'll see what you've got. That was enough. I walked home with a bag of groceries and a feeling I hadn't known in months. Purpose. That night, I got a text from Maya. Are you safe? I stared at the screen. Typed yes. Deleted it. Typed again. I'm okay. Deleted it. Finally, I put the phone down without replying. I knew what that text meant. It was an olive branch wrapped in guilt. A soft knock on a door she no longer had a key to. And while a part of me ached to say more, to ask how she was, to remind her that no matter what happened, I'd always love her, I didn't. Because love, I realized, doesn't mean laying yourself down like a doormat. It means showing up with respect. And when that respect disappears, love must stand aside until it returns. The next day, I walked to the park, sat on a bench with a book I never finished, watched a boy teach his little sister how to skip stones. An old woman offered me half her sandwich when she noticed me staring. I politely declined. Still learning to take care of yourself? She asked, not unkindly. I smiled. You could say that. I stayed on that bench for an hour longer than I intended. Not because I was waiting for anything, but because it felt good to just be. Later that evening, as I was cleaning the counter, a knock came at the door. I froze. Only 3 people knew this address. James, the landlord, and Maya. I didn't answer. I stood there, heartbeat thudding like a drum, until the knock came again. Softer. 2 taps. Then silence. I waited. Didn't move. Eventually, I heard the footsteps retreat. Through the peephole, I saw her back. Hair pulled into a messy bun, hoodie too big for her frame, walking away slow. She didn't leave a note. Didn't call after. Just walked. And I let her go. Because this time, she needed to sit with her silence. Not as punishment, but as space. Space to reflect. To realize. To maybe return with more than regret, with accountability. I closed the door. Turned off the lights. Sat in my little kitchen with the hum of the fridge and the warmth of my own company. I didn't know what would happen next. If we'd ever speak again. If she'd ever truly see what she'd done. But I knew one thing. I wasn't going back. Not to the house. Not to the role. Not to the version of myself who accepted crumbs because he was too afraid to ask for a seat at the table. I was still a father. But now, I was also a man with boundaries. And for the first time in a long time, that was enough. If this story hit you in the heart, share it with someone who's had to walk away to protect their peace, even from family. Do you think Caleb made the right choice? Or should he have answered the door at the end? Let's talk about it in the comments. Your voice matters. Don't hold back.